Hi, so I'm Fiona Powell and I'm going to talk about quantitative intern schemes and where they can lead you. So I started off thinking about the future, which is a really scary thing to think about, at the start of second year, and courtesy of my quantitative lecturer, Albert Varela, who isn't here at the moment, he mentioned a scheme called Qstep. And I already had a scholarship for over the summer. So when he was mentioning it, I thought, but I already have a lot on, so I won't look at it. But he kept talking about it. And this was my other thing, the big question. How do you get a job without experience, but you have to get experience to get a job? So I decided, he keeps telling me about this scheme. Every single lecture, he keeps telling all of us about it. So I'll just go and have a look. I won't sign up for it. I'll just have a nosy at it. And so I went and I had a look at it. And I looked first of all at what the scheme involved. And I thought, oh, this sounds really interesting. But I probably won't like the projects. Well, when I looked at the project, I liked most of the projects. So that was the first problem. But the one that struck me was the Department of Health, because my background is nursing. And I thought this is something I could be really interested in. I've got no experience with research other than I have done some with my other research scholarship, but I certainly haven't done any external to the university. And I was really nervous about going to work in the Department of Health, but I thought I'll apply. They'll turn me down. It'll be good experience. They'll give me feedback. And I applied. This was the Qstep scheme. It consists of a 5-day intensive data analysis bootcamp, working with our data, which is this. And looking at it, it looks really intimidating. But actually, it's more user-friendly than any of the other data analysis programs we've used at the university. It also has the side effect, I'm told by Albert, of teaching you coding, although I'd have to get back to people on that because I certainly haven't learned to code yet. So I did my 5 days in the boot camp, and then I went out onto the 4-week placement that we do. And this was where I did my placement. And it's huge and very intimidating. And there were all these power-dressed people in suits going in. And I remember standing outside thinking, I'm a little nurse from working in the NHS, and these people know way more than me, and what can I possibly contribute to them? I've only got photos of the outside because they're on high security alert at the moment, so I wasn't able to take photos inside. This is some of the things I did whilst I was on placement. I got on close and personal terms with data service, which when I first looked at it, I thought, oh, this sounds quite dry. But when I got into it, I developed this love for data, because data tells you everything. How people feel about benefits. Do we think we should provide housing for young people? Do we think we should even give benefits to people? Are people scroungers, like the Daily Mail says? And the scheme that I was looking at, they were looking at housing wealth in older people. So I started looking at tenure types, and I got so into it that I'm now doing my dissertation on housing precarity in younger people, because I felt really strongly that young people are getting a really raw deal at the moment. It's really hard to get your foot on the housing ladder. Everybody's struggling, and yet there isn't enough affordable housing. So I produced this, which is my presentation that I gave to them. They started off by telling me, you're only going to be doing a lit review. And I thought, how hard is that? We do that at university, that's okay. So I did that. And then they said to me, you're going to do a presentation. It's only a small one. I learned now they lied. So I produced this presentation and thought, they're not going to like it because I've got very left-wing views, and I certainly don't agree with restrictions in social care funding. But I'll warn them in advance. And then they said to me, by the way, it's not going to be just the team in Leeds who I knew and were okay. You're going to be video conferenced to senior economists in London. So after I'd hyperventilated for about 10 minutes, and thought, oh my God, I can't do that, and shaken like a leaf and had my supervisor go, you can do this. Honestly, it's not that difficult. I went in, I gave them my presentation and waited for them to go, that was terrible. And they gave me a round of applause and asked me some questions, which were really interesting about things like concentration of inheritance in housing wealth. And then at the end, they said, oh, that's really good. And I thought, that's great. And they said, so what we're going to do is take your presentation and send it to the Cabinet Office. And I thought, oh, I'm sorry, I just hyperventilated there and thought you said the Cabinet Office. And to the point where when I got outside, I actually said to my supervisor, I actually zoned out for a moment and thought you said, and she said, no, we really did say that. So I was quite floored by that. Just to show it wasn't all just hard work, this is some of the surroundings external to Quarry House. They have 2 arboretums, one is smoking and one is non-smoking. They have 2 Costa coffees, a very nice restaurant, and what they call the airport lounges, where you can sit with your Costa and have a coffee on your break. It's literally the most civilised place I've ever worked. So after they'd slowly sold me on the idea of the civil service, I came back to uni and I thought, so what can I do with these experiences? And I'd been thinking about doing a master's, but my supervisor kept saying, have you thought about FastStream? And I said, well, no, I'm 52. Who's going to want an old codger like me doing FastStream? That's for like bright young people. And she went, not at all. You've got all this experience in nursing. So I thought, again, well, I'll apply for it. What the heck? They'll turn me down. And anyway, it's a 6-stage process. So I started doing the application. And I did look into it because I thought, I've never even heard of FastStream before. And they said, oh, it's one of the top 2 grad schemes in the country. So I sat and told my kids about it. And after they'd had a good laugh about the idea of mum going for a grad scheme when mum's slightly to the left of Lenin, they actually supported me in the idea of going for the civil service. I think they had some concerns about how that would impact on the civil service. And I decided I'd like to apply for the Social Research Service, which is based all over the country in different departments, but also the generalist, because you can move around all these different areas. I'd be lying if I said that the starting salary wasn't a factor. I've never earned 28 grand in my life. It sounded amazing. And I'm sure my kids were really enthusiastic about the idea. And this is as far as I've got now. And that accurately represents my viewpoint on a daily basis. I keep updating it. I did the initial behavioural test, the situational test, waited for them to reject me. Then I did the E-tray, and they still didn't reject me. And then I did the additional questions. And by the time I'd realised I was going to assessment centre with a lot of absolutely lovely people, but very intimidating because they were literally the brightest and the best from everywhere else, and I had the most massive sense of imposter syndrome going. I'm now waiting to hear back from them and checking my emails every 5 minutes. So I might be working for the civil service soon, which wasn't exactly part of the plan. The other thing I'm applying for is to go on and do my Masters in Social Research. Now, although I've applied for FastStream, the Qstep internship can open the doors to all sorts of different grad schemes, to postgraduate study. And the one thing I'm really passionate about is getting out there, because after I got on the scheme, the one thing that all my fellow students said is, oh, I wish I'd known. And I thought, but why didn't you know? So now this is my driving goal in life. There's going to be no first or second year in Sociology and Social Policy next year that says, I didn't know about it, because you will know about it. I will bore you for England on the subject until you know about it. And thank you very much for listening.